My next guest on Motor Talk certainly knows the meaning of the word success. He is truly one of this country's leading captains of industry, and his career in the supply and logistics field started back in 1956 with just one truck. Today he operates a fleet of nearly 5,000 vehicles across 11 countries. Of course, I'm talking about the Lindsay Fox Group, and I'm very proud to say that the founder of Lindsay Fox joins us on the line, Mr. Lindsay Fox. Good morning, Lindsay.
Russell, how are you?
Very well indeed, thank you.
Good.
We spoke about that first truck that started it all. What was that truck, Lindsay?
Oh, the first truck, I think, was an old Maple Leaf Chev, but the last one I drove was a 57 Ford F500, a lovely truck, and I've still got it in the museum.
Fantastic, because a lot of those, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the museum in just a sec, but there is a great history with your organisation and you, I guess, keeping those symbols and those key milestones about what Lindsay Fox was all about, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, most of the people that worked for us in the early days were fellows I either went to school with or played football. And I always found that there was committed loyalty and people prepared to probably put in the hard yards.
And I read that your career really started with that first truck of delivering soft drink in the summer and fuel in the winter. Was that right?
Yeah, well, it started the other way around. I used to cart coke from the gasworks.
Yep.
And briquettes from the state electricity sidings, and I do about 12 tonne a day in 150-pound sacks.
Wow.
And in the early days, I used to lay on the beach in the summer. I got married. All of a sudden, I had to work a 12-month period. So from there, I started carting soft drink, and the two combined extremely well because they were both big businesses.
And I want to talk to you about the success that you've had in business, and as I said in the introduction, you went from one truck to having over 5,000 in the fleet today and across so many different countries. Was the philosophy of that sown in those times when you were in the cab and you had that time to sort of think about where you wanted to head in the future, or was it something that sort of evolved?
No. It was 1961, I think we had 100% growth. It was the first credit squeeze that I went through.
Yeah.
And that 100% growth took us from one truck to two. So that was fairly simple. Thereafter, the philosophy of having one or two working effectively, the only difference was that with another 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 trucks, the only difference was naught. So the philosophy had to be right and carried through as the business grew.
And I suppose it's not just the vehicles, but of course today the whole supply and logistics industry is probably far more complex than what it was back then, with warehousing requirements and managing packages from go to woe, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the warehousing's a big facet. When we started, the warehouse function was totally separate to that of the transportation. But today, warehousing and transportation are hand in glove. And they've got to work in conjunction with one another to make it easy. And the supply chain logistics of bringing the goods from the manufacturer into the warehouse and then from the warehouse out to the retail store virtually means you're trying to combine the fleet to maximise the load capacities all the way through the supply chain.
Which must be logistically a massive job.
It is when you consider that we do just under 1 billion kilometres a year.
Jeez.
And your statistic of 5 is now 6.
Really?
6,000 vehicles, 22,000 staff, 11 countries, and we pay $3.2 million a day wages.
My goodness.
It's tough when it's leap year. The 3.2 to pay.
Lindsay, clearly you and transport and I guess everything with wheels were meant to be. Taking your mind back, do you remember the first time that you ever sat in a truck, or the first time you ever drove a truck? Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, well, I can remember the first time. My father was a truck driver, and he worked for a company called Reckitt and Coleman.
Yeah.
And this must have been the latter part of the war years, around 1944, 1945. And they had a charcoal burner that generated the fuel to run the engine on that particular truck. And when he was carting Reckitt and Coleman Dettol and Keen's mustard, I remember those things quite well. I guess in the early days. I was driving a truck when I was 16, so that was the old Lindsay Chev. That was quite an act.
And I heard you actually bought your first truck before you had your licence, was that right?
Well, close enough to simultaneously. I managed to buy a second-hand truck from EV Thames, a truck wrecker in Richmond, who are now out in Reservoir, and old Ernie allowed me to pay him 4 quarterly £100 promissory notes. I went and visited him. He's in his late 80s, and he looked at me with very few teeth in his head, and he said, "Lindsay, I should have left that money as an investment with you rather than living your payment."
Could have been a better return, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Quite a character. The industry's full of characters.
And I think that is the great thing about transport, isn't it? The people that actually do the work and are at the coalface, they are a unique breed of people, aren't they?
They are, and the history of our industry goes back to people that sort of bought a truck and finished up with a successful trucking business.
Yeah.
In the same period of time, there are 16,000 owner-drivers that go broke every year.
Jeez.
So when they go broke, somebody else buys their truck and they go broke. It's a very tough industry, and the self-educated have to learn very quick. When I first started, I thought my gross income was my net. But it didn't take me long to find out that I was wrong.
I think there's a few people in business that have discovered that exact same thing, rather by shock.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Russell.
Lindsay, just final question on the industry itself as it stands today. I mean, just as tough today or tougher than what it was, a few years ago? It's
tougher, but the scale is bigger, and certain sectors of the industry are going through a depressed period. White goods, steel, lots of construction material, they're down, but people are still eating, still drinking, still driving their cars, still smoking. Across the board, all the consumables are pretty much what they are under normal circumstances.